Good evening. This is Maestro Cretella with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 2v2 on Valderus Refinery. Our first player right here is HolyHammer, the Warboss of Dawn of War 2, playing as the Warboss. He's got a bionic eye. He's also wearing a truck on his back. He can disrupt units with his stomp. He can charge into them if he gets angry bits. He can become really tanky with some heavy armor, and he can buff himself or many other units with some great buffs. His teammate is Wurgl. Wurgl, very good player, playing as the Eldar Warlock. This is his main, the Warlock. It's kind of like, he can be a few different things. Like, if you think like an RPG, he kind of has like different routes he can go. Like, he can go a tanky melee hero route, or he can become more of a support spellcaster. He's got a few things in between. Actually, he's got like supportive spellcasting and offensive spellcasting. So, yeah, versatility, that's what he's got. We have another Warlock right here. Look at the moose antlers on this Warlock. The Warlock, I already talked about the Warlock, but this is Adila playing as this Warlock, also a good player. Finally, we have Noisy, short for Noisy Elmo, playing as this Plague Champion. The Plague Champion starts off as a ranged hero with that Plague Bolter that does damage over time. He can be upgraded to heal. He can be upgraded to become a tanky melee hero. He can build turrets and repair vehicles. So some interesting matchups right here. HolyHammer, an extremely good player, arguably the best Dawn of War 2 player, at least during the Retribution period. He had been retired for a while, or I hate saying retired, but he wasn't playing for a while. And he fairly recently came back and won a tournament, and nobody took a game off of him, and he dominated pretty much everybody. Wurgl is another very good player who has been playing kind of on and off. He seems to have a love-hate relationship with the game. He whines about it, but occasionally still plays. Adila, don't know too much about the character or personality of Adila, but he is just another good player. And Noisy is a very interesting player. Known as a very creative player, often tries very interesting builds, usually very long tier 1s. Tries builds that a lot of people would think are impractical and wouldn't even try. Also plays a lot of different heroes, so he's a very versatile player. Noisy going for a very interesting build. He's going for double Heretics and double Chaos Space Marines. That's actually a build that I do from time to time. Anyway, right here, looks like Dire Avenger's throwing a grenade, but Noisy just walks right away from it. I was kind of surprised to see that grenade from Wurgl. I thought it was a pretty obvious grenade, and I wasn't at all surprised to see Noisy basically just dodge it entirely. Noisy actually canceled that second Chaos Space Marine and is now going for Chaos Raptors. Pretty good choice, considering all the ranged squads we have coming out from both these players. We got double Shooter Boys from HolyHammer, double Dire Avengers from Wurgl. Those Raptors function much like ASM, but they suppress on landing instead of doing knockback. And they will hard counter any ranged squad. They do need to be really careful about jumping into the Howling Banshees. But one of the good things about the way Raptors synergize with the rest of the Chaos Tier 1 is that if your Raptors are in trouble, if they jump into a fight that they can't handle, a melee fight that they can't handle, you can always run up with your Heretics. And that should take care of that pretty much. Warboss nearly goes down there, but saved by Ardboys, also fully kitted out. So Adila has gone for what I consider a pretty typical Eldar build. He has that starting Dire Avenger squad. He got Banshees because, and they almost died from a grenade or something. Because Eldar players almost always get Howling Banshees pretty much in any matchup except against maybe Imperial Guard. Howling Banshees, pretty much the best tier 1 melee unit. Extremely powerful. Very good DPS as well as very good chasing ability. And they win just about any fight. Any melee fight in tier 1. Wurgl has gone for a slightly different tier 1 build for Eldar. He's about to lose one of his Dire Avengers though, 3 health. Oh, and he does. So, but he had 2 Dire Avengers, which is slightly less typical, but I personally think it's very good. Double Dire Avengers gives you a lot of mobile range DPS, and you can very inexpensively put out a lot of range DPS since those Dire Avengers are pretty cheap just to field. Warlock about to go down too. 2 health, and he just barely gets out of there. But the Shuriken, or the Guardian weapon team, is very nice for Eldar. I think it just, in part, complements, or it just works well with the way the rest of the Eldar Tier 1 is and how they play. Basically, Eldar are a pretty squishy race, but their models on their starting Tier 1 units are quite a bit more expensive than that of the other squishy armies like Imperial Guard, Tyranids, or Orcs. And because of that, I think it really helps to use Guardian weapon teams, giving you that range fire, long-range suppression support, so that since the Dire Avengers are not really good as frontline fighters, suppress so that Dire Avengers aren't taking damage, so that Howling Banshees can get in without taking damage. And this Warboss, ultimately he retreated his Shootaboys somewhat prematurely, it seems, or maybe they had been jumped by the Raptors. But the Warboss is now in here by himself. He has been upgraded with a number of different upgrades. First of all, we got that Cyborg implant, which upgrades his Stomp ability to the Big Stomp. And that's a very interesting ability that I haven't used much myself, but just kind of looking at it, it's very interesting. It changes his Stomp. The Big Stomp compared to the regular Stomp, it has the same range, it does the same amount of damage, and it actually increases the wind-up, so it takes longer. So in some ways, it seems strange, because in some ways it seems like not that much of an upgrade, or even worse. But the main thing you get out of that Big Stomp is that it also stuns, which can be pretty big, especially against a really dangerous unit like the Howling Banshees. The Big Stomp will also change the Warboss's Stomp, the damage type of the Stomp, from melee damage to explosive damage, which is actually pretty inconsequential. Very nice Blight Grenade right there. Nearly wiping those Shootaboys. Will the Sluggaboys actually. The Sluggaboys, oh, they don't just get out of there. I thought they were going to get out of there. They had 1 HP, but that Nurgle infection from the Blight Grenades took out those Sluggas. A nice special attack from the Warlock. Disrupts all of those Shootaboys. Luckily, the Warlock was right in the middle, in between the 2 Shootaboys. And this ultimately is looking not so good for HolyHammer. He's being forced off. But that Stomp, I think right there, Adila was trying to go for a grenade on those suppressed Shootaboys. And he does throw a grenade, and not a good dodge. Not really a dodge. Oh, wow, and we have some Distort Field on the Guardian weapon team. That Guardian weapon team was pretty close to dying. And we're in Tier 2 already for Wurgl, and he already has the Witchblade of Kurnos and the Warp Throw. The Warp Throw, signature ability from the Warlock, allows you to... basically, it does no damage, but it sends units... It sends units in an area to another location. It literally throws them. It can synergize very well with a number of things, starting with the ability on the Witchblade of Kurnos, that Ethereal Slash. You can also use it with Guardian or Dire Avenger grenades. You can use it just sending them into Howling Banshees. Later on, you can use it with Eldritch Storms, as well as Avatar abilities. We have a Death Dread on the field for HolyHammer. He loves these things. They really don't seem like the greatest walker, but they're still a walker, still a vehicle, still quite a bit of heavy melee splash damage. They will lose head-to-head to just about any other walker, though. Except for maybe a Blood Crusher that does not have worship support. But this Blood Crusher right now is, at least for right now, for a very short period of time, it is uncountered. Noisy is getting a Blood Crusher, which will at least be able to damage the Death Dread. With worship support, it may... I don't know exactly how. Certainly in retail, with worship support, a Blood Crusher would definitely beat a Death Dread. Worship is not quite as powerful in the Elite mod as it is in retail, so that might not be the same. But right now, this Death Dread is burning a bunch of generators, using those flamers or those burnas on the hull. Meanwhile, Wurgl has a Falcon. Pretty nice unit. It's an Eldar transport, and we also have a Falcon from Adila as well, so competing Falcons. Those Falcons, a transport, so transports reinforce. They also, you can also put your units inside to protect The Falcon is also nice in that it does AV damage, so it can actually be pretty nice for kiting a walker. So it can actually be a decent choice for soft countering your opponent's vehicle if they decide to go for a walker. And it looks like HolyHammer is going to lose this Death Dread, and I feel like this is an unnecessary overextension from him. That Death Dread does have, I don't remember exactly what the ability is called, but it's basically just the ability to increase its speed, which can be used offensively or it can be used defensively to get a unit out of there. And that's often a great use of it, since that can actually make it pretty tough to counter a well micro Death Dread. But HolyHammer there just kind of suicide. And HolyHammer not with too many units. He only has those double shooter boys and his Warboss. This is actually not such a good sign for Wurgl. Both the blue team players going for very light builds. They have a VP advantage, but I think they are starting to pay for not having built enough units. The Warlock came very close to going down there. The Chaos Raptors chased after them, but the Howling Banshees jumped out to save them. Howling Banshees now in a ton of trouble, but I think they will get out of there. It's going to be very close. Howling Banshee, not the Exarch, just the Howling Banshee gets out of there with 14 health. But the blue team is currently paying for their decisions in map control. They are going to Tier 3 already. They are rushing Tier 3. HolyHammer only got one Tier 1, Tier 2 unit. So did Wurgl. And to be honest, so did Adila and Noisy, but they also had longer Tier 1s as well, or at least they preserved their Tier 1 units better. This Warboss didn't quite go over his other warriors, but he also has the Bang Bang Hammer. It's an upgrade. It also increases his damage with each strike, and I think recently Riku described the effect of the Bang Bang Hammer, basically saying that each strike is like using Wa on one of your orc squads, just in terms of how much of a buff you're getting, and that's for each strike. It's a 5% damage increase, and also a very slight speed increase. It's also just a damage increase over his starting chain axe, although it does not give him anti-vehicle capabilities. Although it is very nice to have a weapon that powerful in Tier 1. 75 DPS. My tooltip says power melee, but I believe in the Elite mod it's been changed back to just regular melee. Still very, very powerful. Warboss also has the Angry Bits, allowing him to charge. Nice ability. It will disrupt when he charges. Adila's Warlock also has the Witchblade of Kurnos, but no Warp Throw, and Noisy's Plague Champion is fully kitted out. Armor of Pestilence, giving him a lot of extra health. The Plague Fist, allowing him to do heavy melee damage, although it's generally somewhat impractical to use the Plague Champion as a vehicle counter. More so, this Plague Fist is more used as a melee counter with the Pestilence Strike ability, as well as he's also got these Blight Grenades, which we saw those very nicely wiping Sluggus before. Very nice grenade ability. We do have knobs already out for HolyHammer. They have been upgraded to have their knob. Let's take a look at those knobs. Pretty beastly looking, especially the knob on the knob squad has a secondary chain axe on his back that he does not actually use, and he has quite an amazing helmet. Wurgl going for a D-cannon, long-range artillery unit. We also have some shrines in the middle from Noisy. Those Chaos Shrines of Nurgle, as well as a turret. So those Chaos Shrines of Nurgle will be healing, be doing area of effect healing. It will also be reinforcing, although I don't know why this Heretic squad is not reinforcing. Maybe Noisy does not want to reinforce it. Blood Crusher in a lot of trouble, taking a lot of, it's taking Falcon hits, but it was the Blood Crusher was getting healed by the worship from those Heretics. So the red team is well dug in the middle, and that D-cannon could really help to dislodge it, but at this point, Wurgl is going to lose that D-cannon. So sad to see that happen. But that Wurgl with that D-cannon could, with a nice singularity, could have done very well to dislodge these Heretics, the Dire Avengers, and the Brightlands. Unfortunately, it's set up right in front of Howling Banshees and Chaos Raptors and just straight up died. Adila, meanwhile, has a D-cannon of his own. We do have a Plague Cloud in a curious position, since that's Noisy's Plague Cloud. Adila lost some kind of unit. He lost his Falcon, in fact. Meanwhile, Wurgl's Falcon is still alive, has the energy shield, making it a lot tankier, and it is hard to tell what's going on. A Call to Boys, I think now, and an Ethereal Slash. And an Eldritch Storm? Is that really an Eldritch Storm? Yes, it is. I can hardly even tell who used that and who got hurt from it more. I mean, I'm guessing that it was Wurgl who used it. He did hit some of HolyHammer's knobs, but HolyHammer's knobs have been, I think, were also using just about every global that the Warboss has. I think HolyHammer used Call to Boys to reinforce them. He did use Ard Boys and User Chop was on them. I think they will wipe that Plague Champion right there. And yes, they do. And Knobs now level 2. So that was a huge engagement. Very hard to tell what was going on. Noisy obviously came out not on top of it. Only down to a CSM squad and his Raptors. Lost his Plague Champion, and he's... One of the difficult things about losing your hero, especially on this map and in this position, is that it's extremely hard to have your teammate revive you, because you basically need to win the middle back, or just buy your hero back. So you do need to be really careful about overextending your hero in the middle of the map. Mark of Zinchcast Space Marines at level 2 doing a ton of damage to those Dire Avengers. We have a lot of things going off right there. I think a Singularity, and we also had that Witchblade of Kurnos ability, the Ethereal Slash. Warboss will go down right here. And yeah, this D-Cannon needs to retreat. He does not want to lose it the way that Wurgl did. Wurgl now going for an Avatar though, so we might see a combination of the Warp Throw and the Avatar that is just, I'd say, one of the signature combinations with the Warlock. He still has his Dire Avenger grenades that he can use as well, but that Wailing Doom from the Avatar covers such a huge area that it's really ideal for using with that Warlock Warp Throw ability, since the Warp Throw can get a lot of units in it. You can get like three squads or so, maybe even 4 if they're really bunched up. These Howling Banshees need to get out of there. I think Wurgl will try to put them in the transport, but he's not able to pull it off. Noisy infects most of his own units. And we now have Melta-Raptors. I was actually surprised to see that, because I just suddenly saw a Melta-Bomb. Now we have Melta-Raptors, and they might just go down. No, they will be just fine, but Melta-Raptors sacrifice the melee capabilities of the Raptors so that they can get Melta-Guns and Melta-Bombs, turning them into a vehicle counter. Now, the interesting thing about that upgrade is that you can only get it in Tier 3, which is somewhat curious. This Falcon, unfortunately, it's level 3, but its life is over. At literally 1 HP, it's really just tanking, mostly thanks to its energy, but there it goes. And now we do have that Avatar out. Noisy at least has a decent counter for that Avatar in the form of his Mark of Zinchcast Space Marines. And actually, both the Mark of Zinchcast Space Marines and the Chaos Raptors will do quite a bit of damage to the Avatar. They just need to be careful about not letting the Avatar get into range of either one of them. Oh, and a Wailing Doom, that's got to be the end of that Fire Prism. Can it just barely get out of range? It does just barely get out of range, but I don't know if it'll be able to get away from this looted tank. These Chaos Raptors need to be very, very careful. This Fire Prism also needs to be extremely careful. Switch back to the Explosive Blast so that it can disrupt all of those knobs, as well as this Warboss. The Warboss is still hitting on it. He's using just a regular Bang Bang Hammer, which does not do heavy melee damage, but it's just a high damage weapon. That Fire Prism is pretty low on health, and we have Chaos Terminators called in right here. Interesting choice. Right now, they won't be doing so good against the Avatar. They will be doing very well against the Avatar, as well as the knobs, if they get some Lightning Claws. Meanwhile, it looks like Adila is over here fighting off on the side. Now, much of the fighting on this map always congregates toward the middle. So if you're disciplined about routinely going to the sides for back caps, you can kind of stay in the game, since most players will generally leave the sides somewhat unguarded, relatively. Some players might leave like a single suppression team there, so if you're just trying to back cap with, say, like a single range squad, you'll probably get forced off. But most of the fighting congregates in the middle. Looks like Wurgl and HolyHammer are pushing on the force of both the Avatar and those knobs. I think the Plague Champion might be in a little bit of trouble right here against I think he just used the Pestilent Strike ability. And this Fire Prism is struggling just to stay alive. We actually have the autocannon on the Chaos Terminators. Something's going in right there. There was that a call-in? No. That must have been a target for the looted tank. But Noisy being pushed pretty much back into his base. Those autocannon Terminators will be very good against the looted tank, as well as the infantry. Basically just the regular infantry. So it's a VP lead for the blue team, but the red team right now, it's actually a no-cap game. And unfortunately, Wurgl is going to lose his Dire Avengers. No, he's not. They just barely get out of their 10 health, but they are level 4. Level 4 Dire Avengers. We definitely have a few leveled squads right here. Level 3 knobs are going to be absolutely beastly. Level 3 Shooter Boys, level 6 Warboss, level 4 Warlock, but he's dead. Oh, and it looks like Wurgl just lost something. I don't even remember what. Adila with many of his squads at level 3 or level 2. But double knobs from HolyHammer. I think we really need to see, actually just might need to keep that Fire Prism on the Explosive Blast so it can really disrupt all these knobs. Fortunately, Adila's Dire Avengers are all the way over here, so he doesn't have them available to repair his Fire Prism. And this Avatar still they have not been able to deal with this Avatar. I wonder if Adila should consider getting Dark Reapers to do some really good damage. Right here, the Dire Avengers, unfortunately, I think they are going to lose that fight. I think they tried to grenade the... Oh, just kidding! The Guardian Weapon team comes to support, and those Guardian models on the Guardian Weapon team helped out. Unfortunately, they got to be really careful now. I think if Wurgl reacts... Oh, I think if he had reacted quickly enough with a Wailing Doom, he could have taken out that Dire Avenger squad. And oh my god, what is happening right here? HolyHammer is getting destroyed. He does use Call the Boys again to reinforce his knobs immediately, but they're getting disrupted by this Providence Warlock. The Providence Warlock goes invincible. And then he can... The cooldown on his abilities are reduced to very low so that he can use an ability like Ethereal Slash many, many times. But Noisy needs his Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines to target the Avatar. Right now, they are the highest source of damage against that Avatar. So Mark of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines right now target the Avatar. Yes, they are targeting the Avatar, and this is good because now I think this will be a dead Avatar, and yes, it is. Ooh, and this is Wurgl is being disrupted right here, so he can't... Oh, he's using Providence to help revive HolyHammer, and he can actually continue reviving the Warboss even through that Ethereal Slash ability. Very nice saves by Wurgl the Warlock. But the VPs are running out for the red team. It looks like Adila is again going for a cap on the side, and as long as they can keep that cap up, the red team should take this. They do have a huge army advantage. They just need to hold onto the VPs, so they really can't afford to let any of these VPs go. Adila right now should probably set up his D cannons in a position so that they cover the VPs. You should cover one, maybe use one to cover the middle, maybe another one to cover this side victory point. Because Wurgl basically has nothing. Wurgl can't do anything except backcap pretty much. And unfortunately, neither Noisy, alright, Noisy is now starting to react, I think. Because they can't really afford to let those VPs go back into the blue team's hands. The blue team at this point really can't fight enough to stay in the game. Their only chance would really be to cap. And the Wurgl's Dire Avengers go down in the process, so it's going to be very difficult for them to come back at this point. But Wurgl is using his Autarch to try to capture the middle, but that Fire Prism knocks her off the point. Oh, and these knobs are getting in. Unfortunately, they really need to get that Autarch off the point. They cannot allow her to get the cap. But was that a warp throw? That must have been a warp throw from Adila to get that Autarch off the point again, but they just can't let her have the point. Another big stomp from that Warboss. So it's a 1-to-1 cap, 39 VPs to 29. But again, wow. So it looks like Wurgl almost got a decap off on that VP. Could have been very close. HolyHammer and Wurgl are just hanging on, trying to go for whatever they can get. They only have 29 VPs to go, but Adila and Noisy now have massive, massive armies. And I don't know if it's really possible anymore. Blue Tank gets surrounded by those Banshees and goes down. I think that's probably going to be a game for Adila and Noisy. Alright, it's now a 2-0 cap and soon to be a 3 cap. But do we have... Oh, that's just more of the Warlock using the Ethereal Slash ability. It's actually Adila's Warlock now. And that is the game in favor of Adila and Noisy. Hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.